Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the Modern Workplace Windows and Devices call for January 2018. Just to make sure that everybody's able to hear what I'm saying, if you could just, in the message window, type whether you had coffee or tea this morning. That'll just help me understand if people are hearing me fine. See, water. I didn't give that option. That's a great option there. Let's see. Okay, great. If you do have any audio issues, you can dial into the conference bridge. I did put that information in the message window. Also, if you have any issues with advancing slides or anything like that, try refreshing your browser. And if that doesn't fix the problem, send a message and I'll be checking those questions or those messages as they come in. So I just wanted to, before we get started with the main presentation, I did want to go over a couple things. One is that I do have to make the disclaimer, this call will be recorded. If you prefer not to be recorded, you can drop at this time, but do know that we will post the presentation on the Yammer community as well as the call recording a day or two after the call. As we go through the presentation, if you have any questions, again, type those questions in the message window, and then during breaks in the presentation, I'll ask those questions to the presenter. So quickly, I just wanted to let everybody know about the new technical communities for our U.S. partners. We have 5 solution areas that we're focused around. Modern Workplace, which includes Office 365 and Voice, Windows and Devices, and then Enterprise Mobility and Security. So I'll talk more about this later. But for the other solution areas, business applications, application infrastructure, data and AI, and then open source solutions, I wanted to make you aware of monthly calls that occur with those communities as well. So I provided the links for to register for those calls. Within Modern Workplace, for partner training that we'll be hosting, you can get that information by going to aka MS Hot Sheet News. Let me mute the audience. And that's actually for all of the solution areas, not just Modern Workplace. So you'll get all the information at Hot Sheet News. Our Modern Workplace Technical Yammer community, there you're able to post questions and get answers from the community, as well as that's where we'll post the presentation after a call. Here's the link for our call registration. We actually host 3 calls a month. We have the productivity call for Modern Workplace every second Friday of the month. We have the security call for Modern Workplace the 3rd Tuesday of every month. And then we have the Windows and Devices call every 4th Tuesday of the month. And then the last month of the quarter, we actually combine all of them and just have one call, and we actually do a quarterly update call to give you an overview of the most recent changes that occurred during the past quarter. And then also for more resources, you can visit our blog or community blog at aka.ms/usblog. So with that, again, do remember that if you have any questions, please post them into the message window, and then I'll be able to ask them during the breaks. But now I would like to hand things over to Todd for the main presentation.
All right, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're located today. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak to you about Microsoft's 365 Business. Just to confirm, Willie, you can see my screen okay, right?
That is correct.
Perfect. Before I continue. So for those that don't know me, my name is Todd Yukum. I'm a partner technology strategist like Willie. But I think today's call is important to know that before this particular role, I was also in the enterprise, the EPG space, calling on customers directly. And I'll try to weave that into the discussion today as I think about how you as a partner interact with your customers and where the opportunity is with the Microsoft 365 Business offering. So I just want to give you a little bit of that background as far as my experience and how I'm going to try to tailor this for you today. So the agenda are three areas we're going to cover today. What does the current environment look like today? So when you think about where your customers are from a technology perspective, how does that weave its way into the M365 business discussion? Of course, what is Microsoft 365 Business? If not familiar, I'm going to try to go through that for you and get you caught up on the new offering and how that plays into the solutions and offerings that you provide your customers. And then lastly, from a partner perspective, how do you succeed in selling Microsoft 365 Business to your customers? Since Microsoft 365 Business is really focused on the small and medium business segment, so think of your customers that are anywhere from 300 seats on down. If you think about that from the perspective of the customer, these are some of the areas that you'll find, and I experienced this myself, even, believe it or not, in the enterprise space. Oftentimes, they're running with legacy Microsoft platforms that are good enough. They do what they need to do their daily jobs, and they're okay with previous versions of Windows or Office or even their back office environment. Now, particularly to the small and medium business, often find that they have little to no IT staff and support. And because of that, often little to no technology strategy, which kind of is the reason why they're still using legacy technologies. On top of that, along the way, they may have added single point solutions to answer other needs, whether they're using Google or Dropbox or Salesforce, AirWatch. So the discussions that you could be having with your customers are, how do we build an IT strategy to move you to more modern technologies that allow for greater collaboration and security, as well as integration with other technologies? Doesn't mean they have to eliminate third-party applications and products that they're using today, although there may be opportunities for you to position Microsoft to potentially replace them. But there's definitely opportunities for integration as well. If they do have a particular point solution that fits their market well, there's opportunities to integrate that. So just kind of think of that holistically when having this conversation in regards to Microsoft 365 Business. Now, as you think through that conversation with your customer, here's some of the other areas that they hopefully are thinking about. Hopefully, they're recognizing that because of this back-end environment, these perhaps legacy Microsoft applications that are out of date, maybe even out of support, that are not on the latest, greatest, if you will, as well as other third-party applications, that it's very difficult to manage all that. Keeping up to date with support and maintenance and updates and security patches and feature updates and all of these sorts of things that go along with managing all of those different applications. On the other side, how do they answer their customers' demands? What are customers asking for today? If we go through this conversation around digital transformation, and our customers and their customers are all going through the same process. They're looking for ways to answer their own customers' solutions, problems, quicker, faster, having insights into data for smarter decisions. And also, lastly, the competitiveness in the marketplace. How does your customer stay competitive? Instead of obviously going out of business, how do they continue to build and grow and drive their own business? Or what are the areas that they focus on, whether it's a variety of verticals, manufacturing, healthcare, finance, etc., or services? And how do they continue to build and evolve their own businesses, providing new offerings to their customers? So all of these things should come into play when having a discussion focused particularly on Microsoft 365 Business. So, for those of you on the call that are thinking, great, he keeps talking about Microsoft 365 Business, I don't know what it is. Well, let me go through with you. So for those of you that are hopefully at least familiar with Office 365, about a year or two ago, Microsoft created some bundled offerings, if you will, where we've consolidated several different products into a way to build more value into the offering to the customer. There was the Secure Productive Enterprise, for example, the Cloud Productivity Suite, so on. And this now, Microsoft 365 Business, is the maturity of those offerings that really encompasses all the different products, going back to that previous screen, that will allow you to provide a solution to your customer, those small and medium business customers, that can hopefully get them on the later, more current platforms and enable new functionality as well, things around collaboration and communication, but also security. Security is obviously a huge concern, and how security is managed today through things like Active Directory and identity management, mobile device management, application management, are all things that are going to be very important to the decision makers at your customer site, whether they have a CISO or what have you. So the Microsoft 365 Business is the integration of Office 365, all the typical applications that you're probably very familiar with selling today, as well as enterprise-grade functionality around Windows 10 and mobile device management. And lastly, a single admin console for management of those devices, as well as policies, security policies, and updates for them. So it integrates all of those different areas together into one nice package that you can position and bundle for your customer with a variety of different packages. And we'll get into the different offerings within Microsoft 365 in a little bit, but we're going to focus on business right now. So once you've sat down with your customer and you've gone through some of the slides that I've already covered, and you're understanding that there's some challenges, there's some business and technical challenges that your customer's facing, and you're starting to think through a strategy on how you can help improve that with Microsoft 365 Business. What does it mean for you as a partner? Certainly increasing profitability by helping simplify the sales cycle, avoiding your customer from having to source from a variety of different solutions and vendors, and quicker implementation. You know, one of the struggles that I also found in EPG, and I think this applies very well to SMB as well, is the implementation strategy. And partly that's the reason why a lot of times they're still running legacy applications and hardware and so forth, is because the implementation is often very challenging and complex and lengthy. So with the single portal, single administration, single vendor, if you will, Microsoft, we can really help streamline that process and make it much more efficient and comfortable for the end customer who ultimately makes that decision to move to Microsoft 365 Business. On top of that, expanding services. You know, if you're a Microsoft partner out there today, I would imagine you're probably adding or including some sort of services with all of your Microsoft sales, whether it's a implementation service, a design service, or even a managed service. And with including things like identity management as a managed service would be a great opportunity for you to think about how to increase or attach services to the Microsoft 365 Business offering for your customers. And of course, it helps increase additional revenue as well. And lastly, for those customers that may have been on the fence for the past few years, maybe you've had discussions with them about Office 365 or Windows 10 individually. And now you can go back and you can really show them the value of all of these products working together with the overlying security solution that is built into the solution as well. You can really show your value as a trusted advisor to that customer and enable them to make that decision to move forward with Microsoft 365 Business. Of course, we certainly have some quotes to back up our thought process here and why we invest in these solutions. And here's a couple of quotes from your Microsoft partner peers that I think are valuable. So the first one here, increasing your profitability. Eric from ProServe IT says, creates a friction-free sales process. Think about your salespeople that are out there selling solutions today. They're easy, right? No brainer. You walk in the door, the customer signs the PO, you walk out the door, done. Of course not. It's never that simple. But this certainly helps streamline the process, and Eric finds that it definitely improves that as well. Here's one from Will at Cloud Direct in regards to services. The next key component to advancing our strategy, we're using it to extend our reach into our current customers and more quickly acquire new customers. So if you're thinking about how do you expand your business, not only growing the existing customer base you have today, maybe you've got those dark to cloud scenarios that you're working through, things such as that, but also how do you acquire new technologies, or new customers rather, and being at the forefront of offering Microsoft 365 to customers or marketing that out to prospective new clients is definitely something that Will has experienced at Cloud Direct. Lastly, driving customer retention. Chris from Solace IT says security solutions were overkill for small customers. Absolutely. It may be overkill for some EPG customers from my experience. But now he has an opportunity to upsell 25 user customers for MDM services. So think about that. You've got a small to medium business who maybe has a variety of devices in their environment. Maybe they've got some desktops and laptops, but they've also probably have a variety of mobile devices they're using, whether they're iPads or Android devices or even those Windows devices. Well, now you can offer them an MDM solution that secures those devices. So if they're concerned with folks that might be on the road, maybe field delivery people or salespeople, what have you, that accidentally leave a phone in a taxi or a plane or at a customer site, or they're a disgruntled employee and they leave the company. And oftentimes the security concern is, well, what happens to all of this data that's on these devices? Office 365 is fantastic, and it's great that I can allow my users to connect to email and use OneDrive for file sync and share and things like this, but what happens to all of this data? Well, if they have them enrolled in our MDM solution through Intune, you're able to control those that data and secure that data, and I'll talk more about that in just a bit. Of course, with Microsoft, we have a lot of different studies that we analyze and take a look at as we develop our product solutions that we go to market with. And one here from Forrester did a research on Microsoft 365 Business and found for partners was an 8% increase in margins around services, 10% increase in services attach, and 20% increase in deployment and services revenue. So obviously, tons of opportunity there, as we said in the previous slide or two, around attaching and building services models, not only transacting in the licensing regarding to Microsoft 365. On top of that, another study that was done by IDC found in 2016, the SMB customers, that's 10 to 99 employees in this particular study, are spending roughly $1,300 per employee each year on IT spend. That's going to be things like the hardware that they're using, the software licensing that they're using, and so on. So there's definitely opportunity there as well. They're already spending money for their employees on IT costs. Why not have them spend that with you, leveraging Microsoft 365 Business and attaching services opportunities along with that? Now, before I transition into the different product offerings within Microsoft 365 Business, I'll pause for a moment and see if there's any questions.
Hi, Todd. We don't have any questions thus far.
All right. Thank you, Willie. What I'm going to do is actually build this out because I think it's a little easier to talk to. Let me just build this for a second. So while today's conversation is specifically around Microsoft 365 Business, you're probably thinking, well, I know there's other offerings out there, and maybe they aren't all the best fit for my customer. How do I figure out which one of these plans is best for my SMB customer? Because certainly there might be enterprise feature functionality in M365 Enterprise that your SMB customer may want, may desire, may be willing to spend money on. So certainly there are those options. So let me go through this for you. At the crux in the bottom left corner of the black screen there, it says Office 365 Business Premium. These are your typical business productivity applications that are generally the starting point. So think about this too. You may have customers out there today, when you think about your existing customer base, who are already running Office 365 Business Premium. Why not go back to them and talk to them about the opportunity to upgrade to Microsoft 365 Business, which includes all the things we already talked about, the security, the mobile device management, the Windows 10 support, so on. So definitely an opportunity there. Now to the right side of the screen, the enterprise, sort of the core there from the enterprise perspective is Office 365 E3 and or E5. If you're familiar with those particular plans, those are plans that include the Office product, but also a great conversation for your enterprise customers to think about where Microsoft 365 Enterprise fits in. Again, adding in new functionality around Windows 10, mobile device management, security, identity management, and so forth, that's included with the enterprise functionality. Now, the left side is focused on business, and that's because the business SKUs are for 300 seats and below. Again, that does not mean that enterprise SKUs on the right aren't applicable for business, and they very well may be. So you want to have a distinct conversation when working through your customers, and of course they're all unique, as far as their business and technical challenges, and of course their willingness to spend on IT, as to which of these areas are going to be best for your particular customer. There's also add-ons, so it's not limited to just the functionality that's in each of these four quadrants, but also the opportunity for you to talk about additional add-ons in regards to project, Visio, Dynamics 365, and so on. Okay, Todd, so this sounds great. How do I really figure out which of my customers I should be targeting for this Microsoft 365 business? So we've got a little slide here that you can certainly leverage and think about where your customers are today from an IT perspective and where each of these offerings best fit in. You've got the Office 365 Office 365 column on the left, the Microsoft 365 Business column in the middle there, and Enterprise to the right. So you'll see the desired environment that we think it best meets the need for Office 365, which is customers who have a mixed OS, maybe they're running some Windows, some Apple, and so on. They have some on-premise IT, maybe you're even managing that for them, and some sort of a hybrid identity. Some of the compelling events where you might want to position Office 365 for customers that are not already on it, talk to them about end of life for 2007, end of support rather. Multiple locations. And a need to support mobile, like I talked about earlier, the variety of devices that our customers are using today, and how do we support them? Both the data that's protected and security and identity management, that all goes along with that. Great opportunities there. You can also take that a step further to the business column in the middle. Like I say, this is going to be really focused on customers that are looking to move to Windows 10, cloud identity, and protection of those corporate devices. I want to talk about identity for a second. So identity is really important here. Anytime you're positioning Office 365, Microsoft 365, Business, and so on to your customers, from an IT perspective, and I learned this very well in EPG, is that if the customer doesn't have a solid identity handle on the environment today, if they're not using Active Directory, if they haven't worked with Azure Active Directory in the cloud or some sort of a hybrid in between, that's the first step. Identity has to be positioned first. You need to get that cleared up. You need to go through any upgrades or processes there, move those customers to Azure Active Directory and so on, because that's the base for all of the other functionality. The ability for a user to open up that iPad and open up Outlook or prevent a user from cutting, pasting proprietary confidential data into Facebook or private email, it's all based on that identity. It's looking to see who the user is connecting to that data. It doesn't matter what device they're on, where they're connecting from. It's all tied to the identity. And it can be done through a variety of ways, using multi-factor authentication, PIN, hello, using Windows 10, and so on. But all of these functionalities based on identities. It's really important. I just want to make sure that's clear. Once that's put into place, some of the other compelling events and areas for a smaller customer would be things like the need to replace Small Business Server. Small Business Server was great. It was a fantastic product. In previous roles, I've sold tons of it. But that's definitely an opportunity to discuss to them what's the evolution of Small Business Server. Where do we take and move them onto something that's more current, more relevant in today's world? Windows 7 end of service as well. So not only Office, but Windows 7 is going to be end of service here. And how do we make sure we position them to take advantage of Windows 10 and all the new security enhancements and management capabilities that Windows 10 has to offer? And along with that, likely, is going to be a hardware refresh. They're probably running old hardware that definitely needs to be refreshed. Maybe it's a great opportunity to bundle in or discuss or attach Surface devices or another Windows 10 OEM device that the customer may like. I won't name names, but there's a variety of options out there that the customer can choose from. A lot of really great devices in addition to our own Surface line. So a good opportunity there to attach and include hardware along with that. Moving over to the right, there is the enterprise area. And this is going to be a similar mixed OS, Windows, Apple, hybrid identity, but really the advanced security functionality. So when you start thinking about those advanced workloads that the enterprise SKUs provide, advanced security management, ATP, voice capabilities with Skype for Business, etc. This is when enterprise is going to come into play. So you've got a customer who's looking to take advantage of voice. Maybe they've got multiple locations. Even for a small customer, voice is a fantastic opportunity to attach when you've got multiple locations. Instead of having had the need to implement a PBX in each of those locations, spinning up Skype for Business voice allows users to have full voice capabilities, full PBX type capabilities, regardless of where they are. They can connect through their mobile device or on their laptop and be able to do that from any location. I once worked with an EPG customer who handled retail locations. And retail locations are a good example for this because they tend to be cyclical as well. So they've got the seasonal aspect of, say, the holiday season around, October through January, if you will. And then maybe they shut those locations down. Well, Cloud Voice is a great opportunity for that. They can spin up the lines that they need for those locations only for that particular time period. And you can think of other scenarios, I'm sure, where that comes into play. So this is where, when you find those types of scenarios with your customers, enterprise might be a good fit, as well as all the other security functionality as well. Advanced security management, ATP, and so on. Other compelling events that might push your scenario towards enterprise would be Windows Server. So not just Small Business Server, but actually Windows Server. Maybe they're still on 2003, 2008, previous versions of Windows Server that are definitely at end of life and have an opportunity for you to discuss potentially upgrading those. And maybe you'll have a discussion around moving those into Azure, for example. Windows 7 still comes into play here, as well as the same in the previous column, a hardware refresh and multiple locations. I think I've kind of talked through this particular slide as I've tried to provide examples for the previous slides, but this is a great chart. Like Willie said, this deck will be available for you. This is a nice way to kind of land all the different offerings on a chart to help you figure out what size organization and what type of IT complexity your customers have to help you best position which of these Microsoft 365 solutions are the right fit for your particular customers. I'm going to walk through this. This is a bit of a build, but this is great for maybe your salespeople or your technical pre-sales folks that are having these types of discussions with your customers in a conversation. How do you actually have this discussion with your customer? How do you walk through the questions that are going to guide you towards which of these particular offerings make the most sense? First off, how many employees? If they have more than 300 employees, you really need to go down the path of enterprise because you can't sell Microsoft 365 Business for more than 300 employees. It caps at 300. So there's your first step in determining whether you're going to go down the path of Microsoft 365 Business or enterprise. Now you might take a look at some of those. So let's just say they said they were that 1 to 300 category. Then you start looking at some of the other functionality and features that they may need. Looking at things like e-discovery, legal hold, remote desktop services. I touched on voice just a moment ago. Those are all going to be key indicators of when you want to move those discussions to the enterprise platform. Those are all enterprise functionality that are already built into the E3, E5 SKUs, if you will. Next category. Do you require on-prem Active Directory for one of the following technologies? So are they using GPOs? Are they using on-prem file shares? Azure Active Directory? Depending on the answer, if yes, those are things that they need, you might want to guide them to our enterprise. If that's not necessary, which you might find in your small to medium business customers, then you can continue down the left. Lastly, the area that I focused on a few moments ago was around the MDM capabilities, being able to actually manage those iOS, Android devices, allowing those users to connect to your corporate environment, access corporate data, use all the different apps that they like to use, Skype, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, OneDrive, Yammer, etc., SharePoint, but the ability to lock those down and protect them, enforcing, say, a PIN before they can even open those applications, or being able to selectively wipe the corporate data off of those devices if a device were lost, as an example. If that's a yes, once again, you may want to guide them to the enterprise functionality, but there are some MDM features available in M365 Business. So there's a discussion there that you might want to have to differentiate which MDM features are included with M365 Business versus which are available in the enterprise platform. So again there, I'll stop for a moment and see if there are any questions in the audience.
Hey, Todd. Yes, we do have a question. Can you mix and match Microsoft 365 Enterprise and Business? As an example, a small client with 5 to 10 terminal server users in addition to premise DTs and LTs.
Good segue. So this next section here will be about selling, and I have a slide that actually talks about the ability to mix and match. So yes, now there might be some very specific nuances that we can really dig into, and maybe a licensing expert will be required for that. But yes, I have a slide that does talk about that, and generally speaking, yes, you can mix and match plans.
Okay. Next question is might have to be follow up on this one, but where can we get a detailed listing of the MDM features that are not included?
Another great segue. So perfect questions, perfect timing. One of the areas that you're going to want to look is the slide that I'm showing now. With your partner login, go out to partners.office.com/Microsoft 365 Business. That's going to give you a lot more details of the offering itself, and we'll dig into feature functionality like the MDM features that you just asked.
And last question, let's just say a customer has 290 users, they add 20 employees. Do they have to move to the Microsoft 365 Enterprise at that point, since they'll be over the 300 cap?
Yeah, they'll be over the 300 count. So, I mean, I wouldn't probably, if I had a customer that was 250 or more, probably a good candidate for enterprise. Yes, you can sell the SKU up to 300 users. But when you're already into an organization of that size, I would bet you there's going to be some enterprise feature functionality that they're going to want, especially security capabilities that are available through the enterprise, and will eliminate that exact problem, so that a year from now they have a true up they add employees, they have a merger acquisition that now pushes them over that threshold, and now you have to go through a process of migrating them from the business to the enterprise. So for me, I would be very cautious when you get to that 250, 275 area, that you would even still want to recommend business, in my personal opinion.
Okay. Great, Todd. Thanks. That's all the questions we have for now.
All right. Let's continue. So, like I say, perfect timing on these questions. We're going to get into some of the resources and how you actually go through the process of selling Microsoft 365 Business. So there's some great resources for you. I would imagine if you're a partner, you're probably already going out here today, which is the partners.office.com site. Within that site, there is an area specific to Microsoft 365. For today's presentation, that's going to be Microsoft 365 Business. There is also a category for Enterprise. So if you really want to get into the weeds on the feature functionality and really understand the differences between the two offerings, that would be the place I would guide you to look, as well as the TechNet services descriptions. If you're not already taking a look at those, that's definitely going to be a place I would guide you to review those features. Now, as you're preparing to sell Microsoft 365 to your customers, once you get a good handle on the feature, you understand sort of how the conversation flows. Hopefully I gave you a good illustration of how that might work as we began the presentation today. One of the areas you might find is you may have customers that are already on the preview. And much like customers that were on an Office 365 trial in the past, you can convert those to a paid subscription. So moving those customers over by actually paying for those licenses before they expire is going to be a great opportunity for you to have them start consuming and using those licenses through the M365 Business. And then, of course, extending your managed service offerings. I work with a lot of partners, and I know just off the cuff, there's several that are looking or already have in place managed offerings around Microsoft 365 Business. I won't necessarily share with you on the phone today to give away any secrets from other partners, but obviously there's going to be a great opportunity for managed services around things like application management or identity management, device management, just to name a few, that will fall into that M365 Business area, particularly for those small and medium customers. Again, going back to the beginning of the conversation, this discussion today, M365 Business, is tailored to small and medium customers. They are the ones who often have little to no IT and very little IT strategy. So you're going to be able to walk in there and offer them an offering that is going to make a lot of sense from a technology perspective and offload the burden of managing it, managing the identity, managing the security and the updates and all the things that come along with the platform that can all be done through a single platform. So for you to build in a managed service offering around this and include it as an attach to the SKU itself is going to be very valuable for you and will certainly create that additional stickiness with your customers for increased opportunities down the road as well as additional services. That surprised me. All right, that threw me out for a second. I thought that I had, pardon me folks, I thought that I had a slide that talked about the mix and match. Did I skim over it by mistake? I apologize. I thought from memory when reviewing this presentation that it was in there. Apparently it's not. So I will make sure that we get that out to you because I know that I saw it in preparation for this webinar today. So that's a great question about the mix and matching. So to try to answer it without the slide, as best detail as I can. And oftentimes this was the case in the past. If you've been an Office 365 seller for quite a while, if you recall in the past, there were the mid-market SKUs, there was the small medium business SKUs, there's the enterprise SKUs, and a lot of that changed when we introduced the premium SKUs, which allowed for the ability to have both enterprise SKUs in the environment and the business premium SKUs. So none of that's changed. You still have the opportunity for you to have a mix and match for your customer's environment with the enterprise SKUs, E3, E5, etc., as well as the business SKUs. But keep in mind, again, keep in mind that the 300 quantity threshold on the business SKUs. I'm sorry about that. I thought that I had that mix and match slide in here, and apparently I don't. So we've got about 10 minutes or so left. I'm at the end of the presentation, as you well can see. Were there any other questions or discussion that we can have, or we can give you some time back and conclude for today?
Hey, Todd. Yeah, I appreciate the presentation. That was definitely insightful for me. Right now, we do not have any questions, but we can hang around for 5 or 10 minutes. If any questions do come in or any questions come up, please feel free to put them in the message window. In closing, looks like one just came in. Okay, here we go. How do you license a person that has a laptop with local software and also uses an RDP connection?
It's been some time for my licensing days. I'd have to research that. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay, that's something we can definitely get back to you on, Stuart. So again, just wanted to say thanks for joining today's call. We'll stick around for 5 or 10 minutes if anyone has a question that pops up. In the slides, I will have they will be posted shortly after the call within the next 15 or 20 minutes. That will include the links to the other solution area calls. Please do register for those community calls if applicable. And then also the Modern Workplace calls, definitely register for those. Again, we have separate calls for productivity, security, and then Windows and devices. I'll have the March calls uploaded to the registration page sometime today as well. But with that, thanks for joining, everyone. All right, looks like we had a question come in. That's the same one. We'll have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, I have to look at the specific licensing rules for Microsoft 365 Business. In the past, with like the enterprise SKUs with Office, I believe that's what really the crux of the question is, I think, is running Office in an RDP session as well as a local installation. Because of the rights for Office 365 Pro Plus allow for connectivity, I believe, again, it's been a little while since I've studied licensing, so I've kind of stepped away from this. So I'm trying to find this in my brain here. I think from memory it was like 5 installations per user on a PC or Mac, 5 on a tablet, 5 on a mobile device, but it also allowed for remote desktop connectivity. And if I also think back to TechNet, there was a location on TechNet that talked about what was the term? I'm stunned with something because I haven't dealt with this in a little while in my last couple of roles. The activation process with Office on a remote desktop client, it depends upon whether that is a dedicated session or non-dedicated, meaning each time the user connects, it's a brand new, fresh session. Otherwise, if it's a dedicated session, there's a token that's saved on that machine, and it actually counts towards the 5 installations from my memory. Now, with all that said, does that still apply to Microsoft 365 Business SKUs versus the enterprise? Like I say, I don't know, and I'd have to go look at that just to double check.
Okay. Yeah, that's something we could definitely get back to you on, Stuart. Thanks. All right, there doesn't look to be any new questions coming in, so I am going to go ahead and stop the stream right now. Again, thanks for joining, everyone.